This episode is brought to you by Squad OV, the best way to record, watch, and share your PvP gameplay. It's May 10th, 2022, and you know why we're here. So let's kick this off and introduce the players. Hello, it's TreesapJake here, and I'm a budget Garrison for today's broadcast.
Hey guys, my name is Bigmoran, and I am the world's biggest Holy Priest hater. And we're joined today by Absterge, who you probably have heard about before. He's competed at multiple BlizzCons, and he's kind of a household name at this point. But Absterge, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello. My name is Carlos, aka Absterge and WoW, and I am a healer main that competes in streams. There you go.
Nice. Very concise, very concise.
All I gotta know. Compete in stream and suffer as a healer. That's what I do.
Suffer as a healer, that's right. But anyway, what we normally do at the introduction to our show is, ask everyone what they've been doing for the past 2 weeks, and if they've got any good loot or anything out of their boxes. So, Absterge, what have you been up to for the past few weeks?
The past few weeks, I've been trying to figure out what to do on WoW, pretty much. So I've been like bouncing around. I finally got to playing my shaman again. That's been a lot of fun. So I had to take a break from that for a while because it was very detrimental to my mental health to play that. But because I finally got my tier, I can play it a lot. So I've been doing that a lot. That's been a lot of fun. And I think what I'm going to start doing is just messing around on different melee and like pushing rating on that. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. Slowly gearing out the alts, waiting for the tournaments to start up again.
Very nice. And what about you, Jake?
Oh man, I've been suffering as well. Obviously, I feel like as a shaman player, you just have to suffer. I think that's part of who we are now. I think that's just like part of the. I think if you go into the little patch notes, it's like you will suffer is in every single patch note. So I've been doing that, but obviously I've actually been having a lot of fun playing both shaman and DK, and that's all I really need at the minute. Just pushing with friends, playing, having fun, just trying to chill. I think have a calm time. I think that's my aim really at the minute. But yeah, what about you, Big? What have you been up to?
Well, actually, I wanted to say it's kind of funny you mentioned suffering as a shaman, is because the rest of Shaman Mastery is kind of a, a representation of that. The lower you are, the more powerful you get, or your heals get rather. But anyway, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but I recently leveled a Holy Priest when Comstomp was out. And so I got fed up with playing Druid. We'll probably talk about that at some point today, but decided to play Holy Priest, was having, a bit of fun on that. I didn't play too much in the past 2 weeks, been focusing on more real life type stuff, but today is actually my birthday, which is kind of cool. I'm 29, which...
Happy birthday, dude.
Yeah, thank
Happy
you.
Birthday again. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm 29, and it kind of feels weird. It feels weird that I've been playing WoW for so long. It's like I think over half my life at this point, which is
Yeah, you don't want to think about that. I thought about that the other day.
like what
That's
the
depression.
hell, man? Yeah.
Very weird.
So anyway, I think things have been going well though. I've been keeping busy. But I wanted to go into what we normally do at this point after our introductions is the need greed pass. And if you're listening right now on stream or on the broadcast later, feel free to participate. But in this segment, one of us, which will be me this time, will choose a scenario with 3 options related to the subject for today. So since today's subject is healing, and I think not to spoil anything, but I think we might all agree that Holy Priests are probably the best healer right now, and they have some very cool mechanics that I think every healer would probably want in their toolkit. So I'm gonna suggest that we each pick from one of these three mechanics, and one of these we're going to need, one of these we're going to greed, and one of these we're going to pass. And we're going to kind of contextualize this within the class that we play. So I play a Resto Druid, and the three mechanics that I have to choose from are Chastise, Guardian Spirit, and Greater Fade. Um, so that's I guess I'll actually pass on my turn for now. So Absterge, you primarily play Resto Shaman. So if you're a Resto Shaman, which one of those abilities would you need? Which one would you greed and which one do you pass? And once again, it's Chastise, Guardian, and Greater Fade.
I would probably. Oh, yeah. Well, no, I'm doing something. I told you I was doing the podcast thing. No, it's today. Like right now.
You can at least say hi from us.
They said hello. All right. Yep. When your nerd girlfriend walks in, all right. What was I saying? But then I'm like shy about how I'm a nerd, even though we're both nerds. It's like, yeah, I'm doing yeah. Come on, leave me alone.
You got the good life, dude.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Need, greed, pass. Let's see. Guardian, Greater Fade's Chastise. Well, it depends on what kind of Chastise. Is it like the stun or is it the?
I didn't consider that. We'll do Chastise Stun because I think that's a bit more dynamic.
Okay. Well, we're gonna need the stun. Need the stun instantly. We're taking that. I would greed. Huh. I would probably greed. Greater Fade and then pass on Guardian.
Interesting. All right,
I think that'd be good.
Jake, what about? I know you play Elemental Shaman primarily, but if I mean all three of those things would be good for Ellie Shaman. Which one would you need and greed and pass?
To be honest, if I could just get rid of Lasso and just have Chastise instead, that would be amazing because I just get kicked every single time. So I think I'll probably go. This is my thing. I think because I feel defensively, I want more. I think I'm going to need Greater Fade just because that would be so good in just like so many different circumstances. I'm probably going to greed Chastise just for the sake of being able to do Chastise stun, which is just incredible. And then I'm gonna pass on Guardian because I'm gonna leave that up to my healer to keep me alive. And if he doesn't, obviously I rage in party chat. So
Yep.
That's right. So I think I'm gonna need on Greater Fade. I think even though it was nerfed, I believe in 9.1, 9.15 or something, it was reduced by like 1 second. I think Greater Fade's probably one of the like craziest, most overpowered mechanics in the game. Um, and then I'm probably gonna greed on Guardian. Uh, it's so interesting because they buff Guardian in 9.2 actually to stay on the target after its proc. So I think it's like even better now. Um, and I'll pass on Chastise. I mean, druids have a few different ways to stun people. None of them are ranged stuns, but um, yeah, I think just Greater Fade just seems so insane. And
Yep, it's
I'm
all
always
perspective.
yeah,
All perspective. I needed the stun, man. Shaman's the only one that
yeah.
doesn't have it. You just have capacitor totem.
Oh yeah, and Cap Totem's
Useless.
like
Yeah,
janky.
just useless. Just useless.
Yeah, exactly.
just tab
So
target, kill. That's it. Done.
yeah, yeah. If well, people these days have some sort of like 8 different weak auras that probably scream at you to kill it.
Yeah.
It's insane. Um, but anyway, so Jake, why don't you let us know about some of the upcoming WoW PvP events?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
So, going on to the PvP events, as per usual, we've got Dalaran Gaming hosting the 5v5 1v1 duels. That's 5 people on each side, 1v1ing each other, kind of Pokemon style. So, you can keep an eye out for that. Get involved if you can. Just head over to twitter.com/Dalaran_rogue. Taking a look at the official Blizzard events. What is this? We've got the MDI, I think, from the 13th to the 15th of May. Let's have a look. What else? The 20th to the 22nd of May is the Last Stand tournament. I don't know too much about that. Do you know much about that, Big?
No, but I think what it is kind of a relegation tournament for teams that did not make the final bracket in the initial group stage of that event. So it's kind of like a last chance for certain teams to qualify for the
Yeah.
finals.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, Garrison did actually mention that last time. And then what else have we got? And then obviously the most important thing, 28th of May, AWC circuit starts. Top 8 teams from NA and EU to battle for basically the last spot at the grand finals. That's going to be epic. I mean, oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, and Absterge, you're competing in that, right? Under Golden Guardians. Do you guys feel prepared for circuit play?
Can I lie or?
Be optimistic.
I'm the most prepared, man. I'm so prepared. It's just it's gonna be something. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But judging based on what I've seen already, I think it's just gonna be It seems like every Shadowlands tournament has kind of been the same. It's like the same two classes for every team. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm excited. But I'm kind of worried that every game is gonna be Outlaw Rogue. So I
Yeah,
guess we'll have to see how that works out.
I've heard a bit of rumors about how good
Yeah,
Outlaw is,
Outlaw something. It's
and
definitely taken over. I think the damage buff was a bit helpful as well. So,
yeah, that 4%.
yep.
They're skyrocketing. But yeah, and then have you is WizK gonna play something other than Shadow Priest, or have you
Uh,
considered other options?
we had him on lock before too, but I think
Yeah,
it's gonna be hard to tell because I think we might. I think everyone's gonna have to try to take advantage of the Outlaw Rogue. So we played a little bit of
yeah,
Outlaw in I want to say it was the second cup, and then a lot more people started playing Outlaw in the fourth cup, and then the last 2 months we've seen a lot of it. So I think Outlaw's going to be very useful. Probably keep Wiz on Priest and Lock, or hopefully just not play at all. So that'd be nice.
Yeah,
I'm
just
not
bench.
taking, yeah, no Shadow Priest risks, man.
yeah.
Exactly.
I was gonna say I feel bad for Shadow Priest. They were like this really dominant S tier DPS class, and then 9.2 rolls around, they just got kind of gutted and just they got overshadowed by Destro Warlocks pretty much,
Yeah,
and
their damage just isn't there. It's been like Shadow Priest damage has like steadily gone down over the last few years, and
yeah,
now it's at a point where I mean so for example here, I can crit a Frost Shock on Shaman as hard as people hit Mind Blast,
yeah, it's
which doesn't
ridiculous.
make sense. So doesn't make any sense to me, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was. This is kind of again off topic, but Shadow Priests feel like a support class these days, especially now since I think they're playing Night Fae. They're just pretty much little, utility bots for their rogues that they
Yeah, pretty
normally
much.
play with.
They've always just been the support. Like even when things like RPS and WPS last season were good and in BFA, they've always just kind of had that support role and like the spam purge role,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
So does that mean there's going to be some outlaw thug on the horizon?
Yeah, we played it in the second cup, I think. So I think we played in the last cup as well. I don't remember, but I think that'll definitely be something we're going to try. I'm not sure what it's going to be the best into at the moment though, but I think it's definitely going to be an option.
So
Or
what's
hopefully it is. Hopefully it is.
I mean, I hope so. I'd love to see it because I enjoyed I think you did like a new YouTube video recently on it, and it was just quite funny, just amusing, just to watch.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You just all reset your stuff. Like every it's weird that yeah. So I guess some classes just have that. So Hunter can just reset their spells, and then Rogue can reset their spells, and then Holy Priest can help other people reset their spells. So I don't know. It's something for sure.
It's
But it
real
was a lot of
wild.
fun. So hopefully we can actually whip it out in a tourney.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What are you kind of expecting to see? Like, what sort of opponents you think that's going to what they're going to be playing?
From what I've seen already, just watching streams and stuff, it seems like everyone's just on the outlaw train. Like everyone's on the rogue mage outlaw train. Like outlaw rogue, fire mage, holy priest. So funny enough, it's still rogue mage. It's just they're just swapping specs, or one of them at least. So I think that's probably what we're gonna see a lot more. And like maybe what's another good one? Like outlaw rogue, Desher lock probably. because it seems like a lot of people have been playing that. Like Trill plays his rogue, so Seadu's team has been playing a lot of rogue mage. Trill plays outlaw. Chun plays outlaw. Waz went outlaw again a couple months back. So Pika plays outlaw. I think Palomar might have been playing outlaw. I don't know if Aiden has, but I mean already that's 3 rogues on the 8 of the NA teams, right? So I
It's
think there's
crazy.
going to be a lot of outlaw. I think there's going to be a lot of outlaw rogues. So
Yeah, in summary, Outlaw is going to be king.
it's
Everyone's
like,
playing it.
yeah, exactly. It's like Holy Priest. It's like, yeah, so this guy's playing this Holy Priest now. This guy's playing it now. But I mean, that's just kind of like the modern age of tournaments, I feel like, in WoW.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel like it's going to be like, what third DPS does every team go for? Because it's just going to be guaranteed Holy Priest, Outlaw Rogue, and then X.
Yep.
Just whatever you take a fancy of.
Yeah, it'll be something like that, something of the sorts. So that'll be quite interesting to see, but hopefully it's exciting for people to watch. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, that's, yeah, there we go. Right, well, speaking of which, we've got an advert to just quickly run you through this. We've had these guys on here before at Squad OV, so just going to play that real quick, and we'll be back in literally just 1 second. Wouldn't it be nice if there was an easy way to record and share your best gameplay clips? There is nothing worse than getting the coolest play possible, only to realize you forgot to hit the record button. Or even worse, having to dig through 5-hour videos to find it. Luckily for you, Squad OV solves all of these problems. Squad OV will automatically record all of your best PvP moments and integrate them with your combat log to make it simple to find the best moments in every match. You can even make a squad with your friends to automatically share your recordings and watch their POVs. Register for free today at pvp.squadov.gg. God, I don't know who did that voice acting for that, but he's pretty top notch.
That's right.
Yeah, cough. Amazing. Well, we're going to move on to, I think, probably the kind of the meat of the topic. The reason why, at least, everyone is here to talk today, and that's the subject of analysis, and we're sort of going to just really get into the meat of the issue, which is why being a healer kind of sucks. So let's play the bumper real quick.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
My favorite topic. I talk about it every day.
Literally, yeah, literally. So, right, let's talk about it. Holy Priests are reigning supreme. You guys are the admittedly the healers here. I think last time I did healer was like Cataclysm. So, you guys take the reins on this one. But sort of how's healing really changed over the years, especially now, obviously with the meta kind of shifting so much into just sort of like one class.
Well, so in my opinion, I'm curious to hear Absterge's opinion about this, but I think in previous expansions, healers in general just felt stronger. And I think there is a pivot point sometime around like Cataclysm where healers just felt insane, where, people, if you're a healer and if you're really good at it, you could just prevent your team from dying if you're just really good at HPS. They do, pumping out HPS and trading cooldowns effectively. I think that really carried a lot in previous expansions. Just out of curiosity, Absterge, when did you start playing WoW Arena?
I played WoW from the beginning. I played Arena as soon as it came out. I was like, whatever everyone my age was in TBC. I was like 12 in TBC or something.
Yeah.
So I played Arena when it was out, but I played a warrior. That was my OG character. And then I played a healer I started maining Restosham in season 7 of Wrath. So I played season 7 to now is when I've healed.
Okay, it's pretty similar to me. I think I picked up Resto Druid in, I think it was season 3 of TBC. I think that's when I swapped over to Resto Druid. I was like a hunter main previously.
Yep.
But it felt like, at least for the vast majority of WoW's history, that healers were just insanely strong. Like you could just keep your team alive, and I think evidence of that was the games in Cataclysm were insanely long, and even we had deep dampening games in BFA and Legion. WoD was kind of weird, but it just felt like if you're a healer, you could really keep your team alive just consistently. and you unless you made a mistake, I mean, you could just keep everyone's health relatively stable, and it was up to you to pretty much make the save for your team. But in Shadowlands, I I wonder how you feel about this. But do you think healers just feel a bit weaker? I mean, minus a holy priest, do you think healers just kind of feel weaker across the board compared to other expansions?
Um, I would say what I don't know if they necessarily feel weaker, but I mean maybe in the grand scheme of things, but I think what I think causes that feeling and what I think makes it seem that way is just class design right now, right? Like every class has such a similar design of everything being cooldown based. So even for healers, it feels like that where if you don't have, this modifier, that modifier, and then a cooldown, then your healing just doesn't exist. So Shaman, for
Yeah,
example, if you're pressing Riptide without Earth Shield, which is I think with the max conduit, so it's 20% baseline, and then the conduit is another, I want to say 11%. So you have 31% extra healing on that guy that has Earth Shield, right? So if you press Riptide on someone that doesn't have Earth Shield, and then you don't have your healing stream conduit, that makes your next Riptide do 34% more. And then your mastery on top of that, if they're lower. If you don't have any of those, it feels like you're kind of just hitting like a useless button. And then even when it comes to casting, it kind of feels that way. So I think every healer, it feels like there's only certain buttons that kind of do something, and
yeah,
you're only effective with all those cooldowns. So if you look at another class like Holy Pally, for example, if you're not pressing Word of Glory, you're not doing any healing. It just so happens that Word of Glory is crazy overtuned with Light of Dawn and then the wings procs and everything, and you're like double beacon healing. But if you're not pressing Word of Glory, it doesn't feel like you're actually healing. And I think that's a pretty much one of the fundamental issues right now is damage with the cooldowns are really high, but healing is also, even with cooldowns, just doesn't feel like it's enough. And then obviously
yeah.
the amount of healing without it is not too fun either, with certain buttons just not really doing anything.
Yeah, like for Resto Druid, it's like if you NS regrowth without any modifiers, it heals for like nothing. Like I think last season it healed for like 8k. This season it's probably like 10k. But then if you have a bunch of modifiers up, it's a 0 to 100 heal. Like even through Sharpened Blade or like Slaughterhouse stacks,
Yeah.
you can instantly top someone. And it's crazy how a heal can go from 8k to like 100k with just a few modifiers. And I mean, I think that's in general, I think that's just the Shadowlands issue.
Yeah.
And is that spells have such a variance in how hard they hit. And Jake, I'm sure you've experienced this on Shaman. Like sometimes you just absolutely pump people, right? And then sometimes it's just like your damage feels like it's just tickling the opponents.
Yeah, I mean it's exactly like that. Well, I mean for me it's like my issue tends to be that I feel like in comparison to some classes, it always feels like I have enough to kind of like absolutely front load someone to about 5%, and then I just don't, and then all I've got is pressing frost shock to kind of kill someone. It's like there's like there's tons of damage out there. And I think when you guys were talking, I was thinking about just healing in general, just how I feel like Shadowlands healing is an immediate dev response to what everyone was complaining about in BFA. And like it was like, okay, so you hated how slow and damp the meta was.
Yeah.
Here's something that's just unhealable, and you just deal with it. It's kind of like I feel like someone must have gone, yeah, we'll just we remember BFA 8.3. We'll remember all the comments. So here's your unhealable expansion now, and that's kind of like what it feels like, because it does feel like sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've just been globaled in 0.8 seconds. It's sort of like that's kind of, I don't think anyone's reaction speed is good enough for that, as far as I'm aware, unless
Yeah.
they're a robot.
Because I mean the thing with that is what I think a lot of people don't remember is one shots have existed in every expansion, right? There's always been
Yeah.
something that can kill you fast, something that does a lot of damage up front. But the difference is sometimes it was harder to get off, whether it was like a long cast or whether it was like everything lining up. And now it feels like it happens all the time. It doesn't feel like a random thing. So another example is um, mop nowadays. Obviously, there's a lot of people that there's the typical people don't like it when it's out, and then they look back and they think it's great, whatever. I loved mop a lot, but I still remember those games in mop where it's like, oh, the 100 Chimera shot crit me for 60% of my health and I died.
Yeah.
And those games happened, but it wasn't something that just happened all the time. And I feel like right now that's kind of the state of the game where, if a red has his cooldowns up, you might as well expect to die 100-0. Like there's no, oh, maybe I can live. It's like, all right, if I don't react in half a second, he's going to kill me 100-0. And that's just how every game is now. Where before there was a bit of RNG element and it felt like
Yeah.
it wasn't something that was a very consistent thing. But now it is. And I think even obviously at lower ratings, if I'm trying to play my warrior, oh my God, yesterday I was playing some twos last night or something, and people at 1400 are 100-0ing me in the opener. Like assassination rogues are just killing me in half a second because they vendetta sepsis, and it's like, all right, I'm dead. Wow. That's great. Like, that's great. Okay, what do I do there? And I feel like that's something that happens very, very consistently nowadays compared to before.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at the Sepsis Vendetta go, I remember, I think I was watching, I can't remember who it was, but someone's stream, and I was shocked at like how fast the numbers popped up. It was literally like a machine gun, like
Yeah.
a roulette of. It's just like what, like it's sort of quite clearly that's sort of so ridiculous to kind of have that in. You just need inhuman reactions to do any of that. So I really feel for healers.
Yeah, healing is. It definitely just seems like the burst is crazy, and then one thing that I personally have not been a fan of is for at least for shaman, and I feel like most healers kind of feel like that. Casting just doesn't feel rewarding at all. So Legion was the last time shaman actually healed a lot, just with all their spells. Because BFA season 1, your healing was all tied into Riptide, and then they nerfed it, and then you were kind of just like a dampener healer. Like you kind of played with Shadow Priest and double caster stuff and double melee, and you tried to be really tanky because your healing just didn't exist. But in Legion, you actually had you would sit there and you would bomb healing waves at just 2-3 healing waves, everyone's full health. But now, if you do that, it feels like you're kind of just wasting your buttons, if that makes sense. So I think that's, for me, I don't like when I feel like if you're pressing a cast on any class, not even just healers, it should feel like it's doing something. But if I press a healing wave on someone and it heals them for 10,000, when we have, how much health does everyone have in full gear? 86, 85k health. It's not really too good of a feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally get that.
Well, I was gonna say, like, right now it feels like every class kind of plays the support role for their team. Like, I think people, I don't know if it's just the meta, like the way the meta has evolved, or if it's game design, but I mean, in previous expansions too, it always kind of felt like it was your healer's job to save you. Like, okay, the enemy team's popping cooldowns. It's, all my healer needs to do is trade or, do a big heal in this moment and I'll be fine. But nowadays, it really feels like every class needs to kind of play that support role. Like, everyone's trinket on your team matters. Everyone's cooldowns on your team matters. And like a really good example of that is like Balance Druid, for instance. Like, Balance Druid is like really threatening. It's almost like an off healer. But not because it does heals, because it can peel your go so easily. So like this is why like players these days or teams these days are really focused on cross CC, because everyone on the enemy team can shut down your kill.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of insane to me that to think that again, I don't know if it's just the meta, if like players have just gotten so good that this is just the consequence of that, or if it's game design. But it feels like every class right now is a support class, and in some like I feel like in some way that has kind of diminished the value of being a healer. Especially if you play like a mid-tier healer, which
Well,
we'll
I think
discuss
so.
in a
I
bit.
think it's just because I mean, it goes back to what we said, right? Cooldowns being so overtuned and compared to sustained damage and sustained healing. So, a lot of the times, even with how ridiculous Holy Priests are, if you Guardian Serenity and then Serenity again, and then you like Apotheosis and you do your whole rotation, a lot of the times against classes, you can still die through all of that just because
Yeah,
of how ridiculous the damage output is, because you have to actually get the cross CC on the warrior that has recklessness up, and it's like even if he's not getting, even if he doesn't have full stacks of the debuff, the healing debuff yet, the amount of damage he can do regardless is still so high that your guardian double serenity, it doesn't mean much, right? Or Ret Paladin burst, for example, or um, the amount of times I've seen like Jelly die right after he presses heal on his hunter, like things like that are just ridiculous, right? Like if you're pressing a heal for 40% of your health and you still die half a second later, that's where I think obviously the cross CC comes in. But I do think obviously the average player has gotten a lot better and has been pretty consistent since I want to say like late WAD, early Legion. But
yeah,
it's definitely just a lot of the times you have to do, there's more than just one. You can't just live with doing a ridiculous amount of healing, right? Like there has
right.
to be more involved,
Yeah,
which I think doesn't really feel too good as a healer. If I press my ascendance and then we're dying through, and then I press my link and we're dying through, and it's all because my teammate didn't press disarm, right? So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It just feels like so much. I think that's ultimately what kind of feels bad about being a healer in Shadowlands is so much of the game feels out of your control. It's like in the past you could if you're a good healer you could kind of dictate the pace of the game by yourself. But now it's just like there's so many things that your team has to do correctly on top of you playing correctly that it's a massive team wide effort. And I think and we'll talk about this in just a second, but like any sort of healer imbalances I think are direct result of that. Like if you play a mid tier healer, your DPS have to really be on point with a lot of things. But I mean, if you play a high tier god tier healer, that sort of problem goes away gradually. I mean, of course, no matter what healer you play, as we just mentioned, you can, die through CDs. But I think sort of the luxury of playing a high tier healer right now is that there's, you can control the pace of the game in a way that's different than lower tier healers. Um, but I guess that's a segue to what I wanted to discuss next. Let's talk about like healer balance. I mean, theoretically, if we were to make a tier list right now, I think we'd all probably agree at which healer or which two healers are on top. But Absterge, I mean, I'll throw it off to you. What healers do you think are the best in Shadowlands Season 3?
um well, despite the fact that Holy Priest has gotten nerfed 3 times now, they're kind of like Fire Mage in that regard, where they've actually gotten hit with a few nerfs, and it doesn't seem to be enough. It's just like, all right, we're gonna nerf this. They're still gonna be OP. So Holy Priest is still the best healer. I want to say Holy Pally would be next,
Yeah,
but I don't think that Holy Pally is a crazy OP healer. It's just Holy. It's hard to say because it's all relative, right? To what is owning at the moment, but
yeah,
Holy Priest is really good, and it seems like Pally is good as well, but it's very clunky, and it doesn't feel like it feels like it has um it feels like it has pit stops for its healing, right? So your healing kind of slows down, whereas Holy Priest, I don't feel like your healing. It doesn't feel like your healing ever really slows down when you're fighting a priest or playing a priest. Um,
yeah.
so I would
Well,
definitely say Holy Priest, then Pally would be underneath for
well,
sure.
yeah.
Is
So
those the
really,
best two?
really quickly, let's go through every healer, and I guess since you play Resto Shaman, let's start with Resto Shaman. How would you describe sort of the role Resto Shaman plays in Shadowlands Season 3?
I think Shaman right now is kind of in the same spot it's been in for about 3 years now, 4 years maybe, where ever since BFA, it's kind of been this like it's been an aggressive healer, but it's also been a healer that relies on the defense of other classes to kind of do well. So it feels like I guess we've already described Holy Priest as a support class. That's how Shaman feels. Shaman doesn't actually feel like a healer. It feels more like a
Shadow Priest, you mean Shadow Priest?
no. I'm saying like we said about Shadow Priest, how it's a support class. That's how Shaman feels. Like Shaman doesn't
Yeah.
feel like a healer. It feels more like a. It feels more like a utility, like slightly offensive support class rather than a healer. Like obviously there's healing aspects and you are doing healing. You're doing the most healing of in the game for your team, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that. It feels like you're there for the grounding, you're there for the wind shear, you're there for the tremor, you're there for like a couple purges, and like you have a little bit of healing to keep people in the game, but you're more so relying on them to be slightly tanky as well, which is why we've seen shamans for since BFA season 1 or since the end of BFA season 1, which is why we've only seen shamans play with classes that can be really tanky. So, you know, the double melee
Yeah.
cleaves with DHDK where they're just completely anti-caster, and then you have comps like Windwalker DK at the end of BFA that was really tanky, and then Warrior Shadow Priest and Rogue Shadow Priest in Shadowlands season 2 that was pretty tanky into obviously not the melee cleaves were rough because you kind of run down the priest, but overall the class the comp was a very defensive comp, and that kind of is how it feels to play shaman, where you kind of need to rely on the defensive-ness of other classes to be aggressive on the class that you're playing. It's weird.
Is it
Yeah.
still fun? Though that's the real question. Is it fun?
I mean, I think it's fun. I think the problem with shaman is that the amount of fun you have is outweighed by the amount of, I guess, I mean, I don't want to say, I don't want to sound dramatic, but the amount of misery that that you're kind of taking. So when you fight casters and stuff, or like melee caster, or you're playing a melee cleave like Demon Hunter DK, it's pretty fun. It feels like you're impactful. It feels like you can do certain things to shut down the other team. But the second you fight other melee cleaves, it feels like you're kind of just there to slowly lose the game. And it's felt like that for a while now, but it always seemed like, I guess as Bigmoran said before, it felt like if you played really well, you could get away from that. But no matter what it is, I mean, a good example, my team in one of the cups, we decided to blind pick Shaman with Rogue Shadow Priest instead of Pally, because we knew, or we thought the chance of us fighting a caster team was really high in the blind pick. We thought they were going to play, Windwalker Mage or Mage something. So we're like, you know what? We're going to be smart about this. We're going to play Shaman because we'll have like a slight advantage there if it's a Mage. They decided to play Windwalker DK, and we just lost the game instantly. We lost in 3 minutes. I in 2, and the entire game we were dead and we had zero pressure. And that's kind of how Shaman feels. It feels like you're very niche and you're really good into certain things, but the things you're bad against, you struggle heavily. Which I guess you could say that about a lot of classes, but yeah, that's kind of how Shaman feels right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think if I were to describe like Resto Shaman in just in a sentence, I think it's like the aggressive healer. It wants to be the most like aggressive healer, but just kind of sucks at healing. Like it's like a healer that sucks at healing, and you kind of have
Yeah.
to supplement that with other things, which I think is kind of the opposite problem that Resto Druid has and Mistweaver Monk. Just focusing on Resto Druid for a second, I think, well, for Druid and Monk, I think they're both like really good at healing. They just do the healing part of healer really well. Resto Druids have really amazing healing per second. But you can't really contribute to your team's kills in like a meaningful way. And I've tweeted about this before, and people have said, "Oh, you can cyclone people," but sometimes it just doesn't feel like you're cyclones do anything, and in some cases it feels like pushing in for a cyclone is just like a recipe for disaster. So
Yep, definitely. I mean, I think that contributes to just the lack of sustain damage in the game, right? So normally
yeah,
before if you landed a clone, it's like, oh my god, we're cloned. Oh my god, he's double cloning. Oh my god, he cloned you, and you're struggling. But now you get cloned, and what happens? They press a cooldown, and they're completely fine. So your clone just
yeah,
didn't really do much, and it's also hard to even get clones. I feel like as well.
yeah,
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 I,
yeah,
I
for
end up
sure.
I end up getting like I think the problem is if you play with LFG, the clones sometimes like make you lose the game because then like you pull your big damage out and then suddenly they clone the guy that you're trying to kill, and that's also really in trouble. So I guess it's got an impact there at LOCR in the fact that you lose games because you just all put all your
Oh,
damage into it.
definitely. I've had games that I've won with viewers in twos where somebody will like the enemy team at 1700 will clone my teammate when they're gonna die, and it's like, oh my god, yes, thank you so much for cloning this guy. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I could definitely see that happening for sure.
Yeah, it just feels like you can't really make your team win as a Resto Druid or a Mistweaver Monk. You kind of have to just AFK and eventually let your team win the game for you, which feels kind of bad. And I'm primarily a 2v2 player, and I know Resto Druids are really good in 2v2, but I decided to make my life hard for myself, and I typically only play with rogues. And it's like I can't help my rogue get kills really. Like I mean I can clone again, but sometimes it just doesn't do anything. And 99% of the time it feels like your clones are worthless. It feels like the only reason I'm there to play druid is to be able to Shadow Meld drink. Like if I can just, maintain my Cenarian Ward with and extend it with my legendary. If I can save Soul of Forest procs for big NSs, if I can do all that, that's the best I can possibly do as a Rested Druid, and I can't really affect the outcome of the game, and I can't really help my team win the game. And I feel like Miserable Monks are the same way. I mean, of course, you can CC with Incap and Leg Sweep or whatever. I think Mistweaver has an additional problem with that. It just has to cast a lot. Like it has to literally
Yeah,
open up its spell. It has to open up as a spell cast to
yeah. My
do
favorite
any.
thing is monks that you fight him in twos, and it's like, all right, this guy's dying. He's just gonna sit here and fake cast for 10 seconds, and I'm just not gonna kick him. And then he'll
Yeah,
die, and it's like, yep, that's what you get. Like, that's what you get for playing monk. He'll sit there and it's like, all right, he's gonna cast. I'll just wait. And then he tries to juke, and then he tries to juke, and then he tries to juke, and then he's 10% and he cocoons. It's like, nice, we got cocoon out of the way. That's great. And
yeah,
you're just waiting. And that's, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. I did a monk zero to hero, and I felt exactly. It's funny because while I'm listening to you say this, I can just hear myself. Like I can hear myself during my small, I guess, rants, if you will, that I would have about monk when I was doing zero to hero. I would lose a game, and it's like, wow, guys, I don't know. I feel like I can't do anything. I'm sitting here, I'm pressing my heels, I'm in capping, but I can't help them kill. I can't help them do anything. I'm just sitting there healing, and it's like, all right, you guys got to end the game. You guys got to do something because I don't know. The in caps aren't working, the stuns aren't working. It just feels like you're there to PVE and you're kind of relying on your team to do something in terms of the setup, which is definitely not a good feeling.
I feel like something that's kind of becoming apparent to me as we've talked about it is that healers that have to cast in this meta are just at the bottom. Like at the top, you've got you've got like Holy Priest, Ardred, H Pala, all can have like really good instant casts. Obviously through tier set and legendaries and stuff like that for H Pala and stuff like that. But like like just being able to get out of CC and Serenity someone just makes that so much better than having to sort of like press any casted ability like Healing Surge, anything like that, because so many classes can interrupt it, stun it, kick it,
Yeah,
whatever.
definitely.
yeah,
Definitely.
and I
'Cause
think I was gonna say what kind of feels bad about Druid right now is how the entire spec feels restricted by its legendary and by Soul of Forest. So
yeah.
like the legendary, every time you press fifth command, your hots get extended by 10 seconds. That seems like, oh, that's pretty broken. But inevitably, you kind of have to pair that with Cenarian Ward. Like, you want to be extending your Cenarian Ward, so you kind of have to make this awkward decision sometimes to not Swiftmend someone. And sometimes you have to Swiftmend someone who's at 100% HP just to extend the Cenarian Ward. Like, it just feels a bit bad to play around this legendary. And then, like, with Soul of the Forest, as I mentioned earlier, is sometimes you have to hold. So Soul of the Forest increases the, every time you Swiftmend, you get a proc that increases the next heal of your rejuve or regrowth. And sometimes you just have to hold on to that proc and save it for an NS. Like, you can't use it, you just have to save it. And that just feels like really bad. Like,
Oh,
it just,
definitely. That's a you're kind of describing my issues with Druid. That's pretty funny. Because I used to
yeah.
love Druid. I know you're like a huge arena historian, so I don't know if you remember, but WoD, I want to say it was season 2. Resto Druid was, well, they were getting season 3 too, but Resto Druid in season end of season 2, like mid season 2, end of season 2, season 3 was so good. And I was fed up with Shaman, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play Druid. So I made a Druid, and I just queued it all day for like a month. I queued it all day. It was so much fun. I felt like my healing was insane. I could get out clones. You could play the Treant spec or whatever too. That was pretty cool. And then the issue I have with Druid now is it feels like your HOTS don't really do anything outside of Send Ward. And what you're describing too about kind of saving your buttons also doesn't feel good. Where you're
Yeah.
like, all right, I guess I have to Swiftmend this guy because my Send Ward's falling. Like those things are very unfun where it feels like you're in positions where you have to change how you heal because that's just the play style of waiting around NS or like I guess playing around your legendary with your Send Ward. And then it's like, well, I could Soul the Forest rejuve this guy here, but I'm gonna hold my Soul the Forest to NS him. Like that's
Yeah.
also a kind of a weird feeling because it feels like it's very frequent too,
Yeah.
which I don't like.
Because it feels like if you don't use your NS properly, you just lose. Like,
Yep.
you can't. Your
Yep.
Iron Bark is not enough to heal through, burst damage. I think it's what, 20% damage reduction. I don't even remember it. It's
Yeah.
20% damage reduction, which is like barely anything. And so you kind of have to just have really good NSs to win the game, and or to not lose rather. And if you don't like play around that one proc, it's so you
Yeah,
just lose.
definitely. That's how Paladin feels too. Paladin, it feels like you're waiting to use your Word of Glory a lot of the time. So if you ever watch anyone play Pally, a lot of the game they're kind of just like they're pressing globals, or sometimes they'll have, they'll stack up their holy power. But a lot of it is really just waiting to press Word of Glory and trying to not overheal as much as you can. And it's yeah, I definitely can agree. I don't think that's a fun playstyle for a lot of healers where you're kind of just waiting to press your buttons because you
Yeah.
have to.
Well, I mean, let's talk about Holy Pally for a sec, because I think if there's we kind of alluded to this before, but if there's one healer that can kind of compete with Holy Priest right now, it might be Holy Paladin. But like, I mean, what do you've been playing Holy Paladin for a while? What do you think the role is of Holy Paladin in Shadowlands?
Holy Pally feels like the goalie of the comp. Whatever comp you're playing, it feels like you're there. Like yeah, you have Hammer of Justice and that's good and all, but it feels like you're really there to just press your big cooldowns on a go, if you will, on a setup. So
Yeah.
it feels like you're how would I describe this? It feels like if you could set up Holy Pally as like a soundboard and you would put all your spells, like you'd put Word of Glory here, you'd put Sack, you'd put, Blessing of Protection, you'd put Divine Shield. If you could put all those spells on like a soundboard, that would be kind of how you play Holy Pally. It doesn't really feel like any of your other spells matter. It's like, all right, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, oh wait, I'm waiting. Oh, Word of Glory, boom, we're all full health. We didn't die. And then it's like back to waiting, and then you bop. And then you're back to waiting, and then you sack. And that's kind of how Pally feels. So kind of the
Someone needs to
druid
do
you're
that.
feeling on huh?
Someone needs to do that with a soundboard. Like that was, as you were saying that, I was thinking weak auras, get the sounds in, press the buttons. I'd actually love to see that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's how you play Pally. It doesn't feel like the spells you're pressing really matter. It more so feels like you have four spells that are important, and everything else is kind of just there. Like you have Sack, Bop, Bubble, and your Ward of Glory. Because, like we talked about earlier, it feels some spells just don't really heal, right? So I mean, Holy Shock. Let's be honest. If you're getting bursted down by a Fire Mage or something with Combust, the Holy Shock for 6,000 is probably not going to save you. It's probably not going to save you. The Ward of Glory for 22k that pops wings, that also procs your Light of Dawn for 15k, that procs your Beacon healing from the other guy getting healed by Light of Dawn for another 4k. That's probably what's going to save you. So I mean, you could definitely put Holy Pally on like a soundboard and kind of play the class. I feel like just have them all lit up, and yeah, it feels like the problem you're having with Druid is definitely emphasized on Pally, or at least that's how I feel on it. So
I think though one of the key differences is Holy Pally. It feels like you can contribute to your team's kills. I think in a way that's a bit different than other healers. Like I really think like Holy Paladin's a healer that definitely benefits from like pressing W and like running into the enemy team
oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, well, a lot of that too is damage, right?
yeah.
So I mean, an issue with there's the same issue that Monk and Druid are the same, where, like you said, it feels like they can't really contribute. Well, what's something they're both lacking? They don't do any damage.
Yeah.
You don't do any damage on those healers. You're kind of just there. You have like your little CC. You can like in-cap bash somebody on Druid, maybe clone them. But you can't Moonfire, Sunfire stack and like adapt to Swarm offensively because you lose a ton of healing and you're also just burning mana. And the damage isn't relevant enough to keep up all game. And Monk is the same way. Like, yeah, you could run up and Rising Sun kick somebody for like, I think you can do it for like 6-7k on Monk, but what are the odds that you fall completely behind because, like you said, they are the only healer that truly has to cast majority of the game. And I think that's another issue of Shaman can do damage, Holy Priest can do damage, Disc Priest can do damage. Holy Pally can, you can Vanquisher's Hammer someone for... If you have Wings up and you crit a Vanquisher's Hammer, you can hit them for like 18,000. So
Nice.
how long does it take to do that on Druid? Like 10 seconds,
Yeah.
12 seconds? Like how long does that take? So I definitely think that's another contributing factor for sure. Is how good is your CC and how good is your damage? Because Pally, Hodge is a crazy spell. And then you can Judgment someone, you can Vanquisher's Hammer, you can Holy Shock offensively. If you have Wings up, you can Hammer a Wrath. Hammer a Wrath hits decently hard as well. So you don't really have that on Monk. Like if you play Monk and you run in and you in-cap sweep, more often than not, the healer is... Let's say you're using it on a healer, right? We'll just use the basic example. You in-cap sweep a healer, but the healer is 20, 30 yards away from their teammates. So what do? Do you press lightning on them for, I think it ticks for like 300. Like, do you lightning them? Do you roll back to them and use all your mobility to Rising Sun kick them for 4k? It's definitely, at least personally, I think damage is something that I've always really enjoyed on a healer, which is probably part of the reason that I've played Shaman for so long, because your toolkit in general is pretty insane, but you've always been able to do damage. So.
Yeah. I think like druids, for instance, like you can do damage kind of in 2v2, but you can't do that in threes. Like you can't play Feral Affinity, Master Shapeshifter, and run at people. Like,
you can't.
You just die or something. It'd just be bad.
Well, it's all dot related too. So it doesn't feel good to run up and put a rake on someone and then a rip and it's ticking for 500.
Yeah. Well, and that brings us to the next healer, which is, Disc Priest, which historically has been known as kind of like a damage-based healer. Disc is kind of interesting because I think it's kind of like an awkward representation of a few different things we've talked about so
Yeah,
far.
I
Like,
I don't want to cut you off. I'll hopefully stick to your thought, but it's
yeah,
funny. I tabbed to the notes, and the notes for Disc Priest are good overall, but overshadowed. And what's funny about that is I actually forgot about Disc Priest completely. I think I mentioned it once, but I like spaced out completely on Disc Priest as being a healer. So yeah, definitely Disc
Yeah.
Priest is they're struggling for sure.
yeah, and I think their role is they kind of want to be the offensive healer. They want to they. I think what disc priests are good at is really maintaining momentum with their team. So, for instance, I mean their main comp is Jungle Cleave. Jungle Cleave doesn't really win the game off of like control. It just wins the game by just doing more damage than the enemy healer can really deal with.
Yep,
Like,
they just have a lot of pressure.
yeah, and so I think disc priests do a really good job at kind of supporting that pressure because damage reduction, they have so many damage reduction tools with pain suppression, big barrier, and Fey Guardians. So I think, you can keep your team aggressive for extended periods of time. But I think the main problem with disc priests right now is they just go Like, you can do all that, but you're just gonna like run out of steam at some point. Like if the enemy team can survive for 3 minutes, I think you just basically lose the game as a disc. Like if you play jungle, for
Yeah.
instance, you
Oh,
just run out of
definitely.
steam.
I feel like what Disc Priest struggles with is the fact that they are, and like you said, outside of jungle, you don't see Disc Priest ever, right? Because it feels
Yeah,
like jungle is a very momentum based comp, and it's a comp that has a lot of pressure throughout the game.
yeah,
But I feel like we're in an expansion where that doesn't matter. Like, yeah, jungle is still good, but I wouldn't say jungle right now is like the god comp of the game. And I think Disc Priest is also in the same spot where I don't think Disc Priest is a terrible healer. They just their design does not fit the game. So I guess relatively they would be bad, but their design does not fit how you play the game now, which is all about cooldowns and doing setups. And it feels like Holy Priest doesn't have that, right? Like, or sorry, Disc Priest. You have a lot of sustained damage, like passive damage for a healer. Your passive damage is pretty high. Your passive healing is pretty high. You've got a few cooldowns, but you don't have crazy burst healing. You don't have crazy burst damage. And then, like you said, you as well. Where you look at Holy Priests, just because they're the same class, different spec. Holy Priest has good burst damage with, if they're Venthyr, they can mind games, Holy Fire, they can chastise you. Chastise does a lot of damage. Holy Fire after with your 4 set does a lot of damage. So you have good burst damage on the setup. You have good burst healing with Serenity. You still have cooldowns, and your mana is better. So it
yeah,
feels like Holy Priest just fits.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say with
Fade,
Holy
and
Priest,
Disc Priest just does not.
yeah, and I know some disc priests have even shifted over to Holy for Jungle Cleave, even, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Like
Yeah.
even the disc priests are now playing Holy in jungle. So yeah, I mean, to me, Holy Priest, and I think this is kind of the general class balance problem in Shadowlands, is Holy Priest kind of feel, and in the same way that Fire Mages feel like the most complete range DPS, Holy Priest kind of just feel like the most complete healer. Like they have everything you really need to win the game in Shadowlands. And
Oh,
I think
definitely.
like yeah, I mean you played Holy Priest this season and a bunch of different healers. I mean, what has your experience been by playing Holy Priest?
It always just Holy Priest just feels very fluid. Like we talked about Rest of Druid, it feels kind of clunky with, you're saving your Soul of the Forest, you're saving your Swiftmend. Sometimes you're wasting your Swiftmend at full health because you need to extend Send Ward. Um, Holy Pally, you're always holding your Holy Power to press Word of Glory on someone because that's your only heal that kind of really does anything. Um, Shaman is a mix of them where you can kind of riptide the whole game, but there are specific moments where you have to hold them. I think Mistweaver is kind of same where there's certain moments where you have to like wait to use your aura for that one moment you need to get the cast off and you need to press the enveloping and um I feel like Holy Priest is the healer that doesn't have to do that. Like, yeah, you can hold your serenities and like be super min maxy with not wasting them, which is obviously good. That's part of the skill cap of anything and not wasting the spell. But it doesn't feel like you're spending the whole game holding your buttons like the other healers do. Holy Priest is like, all right, I'm dying, serenity, whatever. There you go. You're fine for the next, you're fine for the next like 10, 15 seconds. And then it's like, oh, I'll give you a palm, you get a flash heal proc. And it doesn't, it feels very fluid. It doesn't feel like there's any downtime. It doesn't feel like there's any moments where you're kind of waiting to use something. And I think that's, from a healing perspective, I think that's something that the other healers kind of struggle with that isn't too fun.
I mean, Guardian is such an insane healing cooldown. Like, I mean, it's for the most part, most comps in the game are like 1 minute comps or like 30-second comp. 1 minute, 30-second comps where they kind of do big goes either every minute or every 30 seconds. And Guardian just seems like a cooldown that you can just conveniently trade, and it's always going to be a good trade. Like, no matter what, if it's a 30-second go or a 1 minute go, if you press your Guardian and it doesn't proc, if you can just Serenity afterwards, it feels like, okay, you stop their go. Now, now it's a 1 minute cooldown. And even if it does proc, the effect is still on the target. Like, they changed it in 9.2 where even if Guardian does proc, this healing bonus, which is 60%, I think, baseline, is still on the target, which is ridiculous. So it's a cooldown where you can press, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, my partner's not gonna die.
There's never any downside for sure. That's why even now with how you play Ray of Hope, and you play Ray of Hope most games, and what you do, which is really funny because it seems so simple for being it seems like it's way too simple for being as strong as it is. Where on classes like a shaman, for example, if I press my 3-minute cooldown Ascendance, the chances of me having to link after are pretty damn high. Like, we're probably going to have to press way more. And then Holy Priest is like, all right, we're dying. Ray of Hope, Serenity, you're topped. Oh, we're dying. Guardian Spirit, Serenity, we're topped. And it just seems like it's way too good for being so simple. Like, such a simple combination of buttons that just 90% of the time will save you. Yeah. And I don't think any healer actually has that besides Holy Priest right now.
It's so interesting, like, just that is as a thing in general, because I was watching a rank 1 healer on EU called Reese, and he just swapped onto Holy Priest, and I literally just caught the streamer. He was kind of going like he was just going, Jesus, like, I've been playing Holy Priest for like 5 seconds, and it's infinitely better than H Pally, and I'm just having so much more fun. I literally have an answer to everything. I can do absolutely everything that I want to do, and it's just kind of like, as Big was kind of saying, it's Holy Priest just is that perfect, just that perfect healer. Like,
well, the other thing that's insane too is they have arguably, I think, one of the best conduits out of any healer. So they have this conduit called Resonant Words, where every time they press their Serenity, they get a buff, and I think it's around 80% or something.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous.
It makes their next heal or flash heal for 80% more, and their 4 set is a very similar effect, where if they Serenity, they get a buff that increases the heal of their next heal or flash heal. And so, like, even your normal healing rotation just gets passively buffed by your main spell. So it's like, even if you feel like you've wasted your Serenity, it's still like you can still top your team with just some insane, like, a heal. I think heals for actually more than Serenity, I believe. I might be wrong on that, but I think a heal with those modifiers can heal for more than Serenity. And I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is Holy Priest Mastery is insane too. Like, Holy Priest Mastery, every time you heal, it puts a hot on the target that does a certain percentage of that healing in a healing over time effect. So if you Serenity someone and say it heals for 40k, and you have 40% mastery, like C do. That will leave a hot on that target that will heal for like 10k a tick for 6 seconds or something. And like that's insane. It's like the Holy Priests have the best hot in the game, like
Yeah.
from their mastery, and it just feels like you can't really go wrong. Like no matter what button you press on your action bar, it feels like you're always doing something kind of right. Like
Yeah,
every
definitely. It doesn't. What I mentioned earlier today is it doesn't. It feels like on every healer, except for Holy Priest, there are moments where your healing slows down. And I'm sure you feel that way on Druid, where like your Send Ward finally falls off, and it's like, all right,
yeah.
my hots are kind of ending. I got to reapply on my hots. I don't have a Swiftman yet. My Send Ward just ended. My Adaptive Swarm's on CD, and it feels like there's moments where your healing is lacking. Holy Pally, when you actually just are kind of holy power starved, your healing kind of sucks. When you don't have healing stream to buff your Riptide or your Earth Shield's falling off, whatever, on your Shaman, or let's say your Healing Tide just ended, like because Healing Tide's your if it gets the full amount, it's probably your best button. So it feels like your healing falls off, and then there's Holy Priest, where it's like, all right, like you said, you press Serenity, it heals for 30k, and then it heals for an additional 15k after. And it's like, all right, well, that one button just can save you. And then you have Palm, which adds to your. You have a conduit that makes Palm do more healing on its first heal, and then that heal adds to your mastery, and then you get a flash heal proc, and then that heal benefits from your conduit and your foresight, and then that heals for 20k. It doesn't feel like your healing drops off. Obviously, without Serenity, yes, but it doesn't ever feel like you're in a position where your healing is
And
I guess lacking as much as other healers.
yeah, and even if it does run out, you can just reset it with Apotheosis. It's
Yeah,
like
you can just do that. You have that cooldown to fall back on. Yeah, for sure. And no healer feels like that. Because
yeah,
I mean, what Treesap was saying is so funny because I think everyone in the game that plays healer is experiencing what that guy was experiencing. Because I had that happen too. I remember we played threes like maybe a couple weeks ago with the team. I played something. I think we played Thug Cleave or something. But I played Shaman for a few games. And it's like, yeah. Or no, wait, what was it? I played Pally. So I think we played something alt, some alt comp or whatever, where I was playing my Holy Pally. And I think 2 or 3 games in, I was like, wow, this feels really weird. I don't like it. And I played my priest. I'm like, yep, this feels a lot better. Something about it, like your buttons feel like they're doing something at all times. It doesn't feel like there's any moments where you kind of have like nothing to do. So yeah, I think everyone is experiencing the log on Holy Priest, and you feel like you're in I don't know, you feel like you're just in heaven. It's crazy.
yeah, and then going back to what we talked about earlier, you can just contribute to kills. Like even if you have nothing to heal, you can do something offensively. Like you can spam
Yep.
purge, you can press mind games, or if you're playing twos, you can
Chastise,
press.
man.
Yeah, yeah,
Chastise. The ability to people overlook. Well, I mean, obviously not anymore, but people did for a while. They overlook how good when it comes to like, oh, why is Holy Priest so good with all these comps? Oh, why is this? It's their healing, and it's like, yes, it's their healing, but they're truly like the only healer that feels solid in every aspect. Like they're good
yeah,
defensively, they're good cooldown wise, they're good mana, they're good healing, they have good damage, and they have good they have the ability to contribute to kills and setups. They have everything. So chastise is something that people like. Take a look at what's the example that everyone used for a while? It was comparing RMP, right? You take fire sub RMP with a disc priest, and then compare that to holy priest. What changes? That
oh,
was a
you
question, not rhetorical,
yeah,
not rhetorical.
yeah. Well, I mean, Holy Priest, you have like the guaranteed 3-2-1. Like
Yep.
it's there's less effort required on that end. Um, Also, it's interesting about Holy Priest is their mind games actually hits harder because they're like the spec specific modifier
Oh yeah, that's
increase.
true. That's true. You're
It's so
right.
it's so
Yeah, for some
weird.
reason it hits harder on holy. That is
Yeah.
true. Forgot about that one. Yeah, I had a. That's so funny. I had a game. I don't know if you watched all the cups, but the series that we. I don't remember if it was the series we beat them or lost. I think it was the series we finally beat Kawhi. So ever since BFA season 4, like we actually just haven't been able to beat them in the series, let alone like taking a game off them. And one of the games we won was we had like all our CDs up on the ret, but they kind of stopped the go and our CC ended. And I mind games him for like 20K or something. And I just remember, if you look at the camera, I just started dying laughing because it's like, oh, I killed him. Nice. Great job. Great job by me. I hit mind games 20K and just, they didn't expect it. I always forget
Easy
that Holy
life.
Priest hits way harder with mind games for some reason. I forgot about the modifier there. That's funny.
It's funny too because Boon of the Ascended is like a big deal in 2v2. Like if you play against a Holy Priest in twos, like if they're playing Boon, you have to just like respect that cooldown. You have to
Yeah,
CC
Boone is
that
crazy.
priest. It's like,
Especially if they get uptime because
yeah.
the blast hits hard, the Nova's okay, the blast hits hard, and then if they get a lot of uptime on it, the eruption hits for like 20K or something too. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just crazy how it's like a healer becomes the most threatening thing in arena. It's like you have to CC the boon, or else you'll just die.
Yeah,
You know, it's
the
so
damage,
gimmicky.
and then yeah, I swear it's so funny because it's everything always just comes back to Holy Priest with
Yeah,
just like we said, they just feel the most complete.
yeah,
So it's something like if you theory craft comps, a lot of people think, and what I think or what I thought for a while is if you look at all the classes, all the healers that can play with Mage Lock, what realistically makes the most sense? In my opinion, with Resolve Trinket, it's Pally, right? Because you have Concentration Aura. So the Concentration Aura completely negates the trinket, the Resolve
yeah,
Trinket with increased interrupts. The problem with Pally is that your healing eventually falls off, unlike Holy Priest, and you don't have Chastise. So when you're trying to get a kill, what do? You just run in and you Chastise from 30 yards away. What do you do on Pally? You have to Divine Steed across the map and like try to get to the healer to Hodge them. It's completely different. So
yeah. And
it
yeah,
just
if
feels the most complete.
I think like most healers too have some sort of like avoidance tool. Like you can fleshcraft to immune the Hodge.
Yep.
You can greater fade to immune the, like there's so many things you can do to avoid
Greater
getting
Fade, you can like pre-revival. On Monk you can just roll away. Resto
yeah.
Druid you can just dash away or stampeding roar away. Shaman you can ground. Yeah, there's so many things you can do to just get away from the Pally. But you can't do that when it's a priest. Obviously you can greater fade and you can ground and all that, but it's a lot harder to predict the chastise when they're always in range compared to obviously a Pally that's sprinting in across the map with the Leroy Jenkins playstyle. So
Just a big red flag, isn't he, on that Divine Steed?
yeah,
You just know
definitely
it's
just
coming.
charging across the map. So I think everyone can see that. Like, I don't know. It all comes down to just feeling way, way more complete than everything else. Which I don't
It's
know.
funny. Like I just remembered. There's, Wrathlich King is coming out soon. There's this. There used to be this famous meme. There's this druid there's this guy who played druid named Diziet, and
Oh
they're
yeah, yep. Yeah.
in the tournament when they had like game sounds on. He's like, "I'm running to bash. I'm running to bash," and it's just like slow motion. This bear like enrages, like and slowly walks over to the healer to bash. Like that's how it
That
feels like
is,
on other
yep.
healers. It's like
That is definitely one of the most legendary videos ever. That's a classic video. Oh my god, that's how paladins are, man. That's what they
yeah,
are.
and imagine that clip like with the holy priest. Like now, it's like I'm gonna chastise. Okay, he's chastised. Like it's just like okay, it's already done. Like get your cross CC up now. Like I did my job.
I mean, I'm
Um,
sure you could find games if I wish they still did comms for stuff nowadays because I'm sure you could find games from my team being in that exact scenario because I played a lot of Pally for Rogue Shadow Priest, and I swear you can go back to so many games and actually have that happen where it's like, yo, I can Hodge, I can Hodge. I'm like slowly working my way down. I'm getting there. I got to travel across the map. I got to like run in behind the pillar. when I'm screaming the whole time, like, I can dodge him, I gotta get there. It's like, then you play a priest, and just like you said, chastise. Oh, there it is. He's
It's done.
chastised.
It's
It's a lot simpler. The whole 3-2-1 setup, like you said before, it's so much simpler to do when you have a healer that can CC you from 30 yards away.
Yep.
So
So I don't want to be too doom and gloom here, but I will say this about Shadowlands. I'm curious your guys' thoughts about this. Balance as a whole seems pretty decent in Shadowlands. Like, I think minus the outliers, like, so on the healer side, minus Holy Priest, and on the DPS side, like, minus things like Fire Mage, and then on the opposite end, like Arcane Mage, like, everything feels like pretty good, like, for the most part. And I think with healers specifically, again, minus Holy Priest, is every healer kind of has its own like flavor and kind of has its own like disadvantage. Do you
yeah,
guys kind of like agree with that? Like, do you think balance in Shadowlands is pretty decent? Like,
I guess it depends on how you look at it. I think that if you're looking at, what is viable, then for sure. I don't think anything is just not viable right now. Besides, I mean, I would just say Arcane Mage is the only one that actually just is kind of on the bad end of the spectrum. But if you're looking at viability, I definitely think this expansion has a lot of that across all the specs in the game.
yeah,
But I do think that I think the issue in Shadowlands lies where the classes that are the best feel, like we said with Holy Priest, they feel more complete than the other classes. They
yeah,
don't necessarily feel, because I don't think Fire Mage, and we've already seen that with the nerfs, right? They've nerfed it. They nerfed it 4 times in one hotfix. They nerfed it before that. They nerfed it again just now, or last week. They nerfed Blazing Barrier, and with that happening, Fire Mage is still really good. Why is that? Because they feel like a complete class,
yeah.
and I feel like other classes don't really have that. And healers are the same way. Like, they've nerfed Holy Priest a few times, but they still feel the best. And I mean, yeah, just to not to get away from the point here, but I think if we're looking at the overall viability of classes, I think Shadowlands is up there. I think the problem more so lies with classes not really feeling complete. So the classes at the top feel like they have everything, they have all the Infinity Stones, and then the classes at the bottom don't, is how I would describe it.
Yeah, and so Jake, you play Ellie Shaman, which I would consider like a mid high tier DPS. Like, it's kind of hovered around that, you know, B to A tier all expansion. I mean, how do you feel about like class balance from a DPS point of view?
It's so interesting because I what I've always said to people ever since Shadowlands started is that going from BFA into Shadowlands, I've never had more fun on my Elemental Shaman. I think the design of the class and how it works with Necrolord Covenant in particular, it feels so good to play. It's so much fun to play. I absolutely love every second that I play it. I just feel like in the meta and in the way that the seasons have evolved, it's just become more and more stressful to play, and that's just
Yeah.
because, as we said, like there are just certain classes that just do so much. There are a lot of classes that, for example, just have that utility that I don't have, like the ability to, outside of obviously using a 5-minute cooldown, wall in a stun or get out of a stun for free without using trinket or stuff like that. Like there's a lot of things that I should be able to, like, I wish I could do, but I can't. And then obviously being a class that, especially early on, had to cast more. Obviously, I don't have to do that too much now, but having to cast more to get damage out, it was sort of felt like there people had endless amounts of stuns. Like, for example, DH being able to literally stop me with 3 different CCs and a kick in range. Like, it's it's there's only so much I can take, but I think overall, yeah, the viability of everything is really high. There's so many things you can play. You could viably play Enhance and Ellie now, like, completely in anything. 2v2 as well. Like, there's a lot of Enhance playing, like, in 2v2. You got like like Unholy DK, Frost DK, like a lot of specs are viable, like quite a lot of them, which is interesting because I can't think of a time, at least in my sort of old age memory, where I could literally pick up any spec apart from obviously Arcane Mage and it kind of work to a degree. Obviously, not including tanks, but it's an interesting one because, as I said, like my class feels amazing to play, but it just feels really like poo in the meta a lot of the time, and that's how I felt the last 3 seasons, to be honest.
Yeah, I think like I mean I'm kind of a Mop fanboy, but like Mop was like I think the last time where I really felt like the game was like pretty balanced. Like the end of Mop, everything felt like pretty good. Um, I mean Mop had a kind of a different approach to game design. Like everything in Mop was broken, kind of. I mean that's how I kind of view it. Is everything was good, and I think or everything was broken in Mop, and I think right now like everything is good, but again it's like there's a few outliers that just they make you question why you're playing the class you play. Like, geez, the last time I checked, I think Desher Warlock is the most popular caster on the ladder right now. Like Desher Warlock and Mage by a huge margin. Um, and it's just insane that like some things can just be so dominant. I think for on the healing side of thing, I think Holy Priests represent like 40% of the ladder, which is insane. A single spec, and I think there's 6 healing specs, and one of them is 40% of the ladder. Like that's ridiculous. Um, and again, I don't know how you would fix Holy Priests or how you buff other healers, and maybe we should just use that as a pivot point. Uh, I mean, Absterge, what would you change? Like, do you think the solution is to nerf Holy Priest, or do you think the solution is to like buff other healers? Like, what do you think?
Honestly, this is where I feel for Blizzard because I mean, as much I'm very very critical. I always have been. I've slowly transitioned to not being as harsh, I guess, with what I say. But I don't even know. This is where I also just I actually kind of feel for their pain in terms of balancing and stuff because what I want them to do is I want them to nerf Guardian. I think Guardian's way too strong of a CD with the conduit now. So the conduit, I think it's like 92%. So
Yeah.
anytime you have Guardian up, you have 92% increased healing received, which obviously
And
works for the player as well. So if you're on a
hybrid.
you're on a some sort of hybrid, if you get like an enhanced shaman, for example, and you healing surge, well, whoop de doo, you just did a 60k healing surge because you had Guardian on you. So I thought Guardian was too strong, and I thought nerfing that would be really good. But they took the approach of nerfing, Serenity and like nerfing how often you can get Serenity, which, funny enough, I think is a huge deal, but it still wasn't even enough to like make Holy Priest not feel so dominant. So when those patch notes came out, I was really excited because it's like, all right, you can't just spam Serenity all game. This is great, and they're still this dominant. So I feel like the best approach would definitely just to be to buff the other healers a bit. They buffed Monk, but I don't think hitting Cocoon for Monk was the best thing to do. I think buffing Resto Druid in some way would be good, whether it's giving them more damage. I think that would be helpful. I think um, giving them just more hot healing, like buffing their hots in some amount would be helpful. I think targeting the spells that are already lacking, at least personally, I don't think that'd be good. So like let's say or the spells that are already what is the most important, right? Like let's say they on Shaman, they just buffed Riptide by 30%. I don't think that's the right approach. Like I don't think that'd be good. So that's why Mistweaver, I don't think buffing Cocoon was the right approach because clearly it didn't do much, right, for Mistweaver in the meta. Um,
Yeah.
but I would definitely think buffing slight buffs on the other healers would be helpful for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean personally for Esther again, I would like some way for me to just be able to feel like I can contribute to my team's kills. Like, and again, I pretty much only play 2v2 when I do play, and I don't know, like even buffing wrath damage or something, like I'd be
Oh
fine with
yeah,
that.
definitely.
Like,
You give me WAD throwbacks, man. I used to love just double dot spam Wrath on somebody because it actually did a lot in WAD, surprisingly,
yeah,
and
and Legion,
I think
like
that would be
dots,
nice.
your dots in Legion as a wrestler are actually pretty good too. Like in previous expansions, felt like confident, like pressing my like you could actually be threatening with your damage, and Again, you can kind of do that today in 2v2, but it's really dependent on matchup. Like sometimes you can't do that. It just
Yeah.
feels really like clunky. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would like some way personally for Resto Druids to feel like they can actually contribute to kills. Again, I think they're like good in the healing department. I wish that the Resto Druid legendary like didn't exist, or like it's, I just feel like the class right now is just so dictated by its legendary, Soul of Forest, and like NS. Like those three things kind of just determine how you play the class, and it just doesn't feel fun. Um,
Yeah.
to me personally, I mean, I know some people enjoy it, but I don't know. I don't think it's very fun. For Holy Priest specifically, I mean, yeah, I just think they have so much. Like I don't know what to remove. I think Guardian is probably a good start though, because I think Guardian, like especially with the Guardian Angel talent, right? The fact that it's a 1 minute cooldown, or it can be a 1 minute cooldown, is just insane. Like
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single defensive in the game that's as efficient as that. Like for Resto Druid, my Iron Bark is a 20% damage reduction, increases all healing done, or hot healing to the done to the target by 20%. That's like nothing compared to Guardian. Like those are two like completely disjointed cooldowns, but my Iron Bark has a 90-second cooldown and Guardian has like a 1 minute cooldown. It just feels like
Yeah, man.
unfair. Like
That's why I said about when every healer. That's why I mentioned about every healer logging on a priest and just realizing how much better it feels. Because that's
yeah.
how shaman is. Like shamans for 2 expansions now. If you ascendance, most likely you are using way more, or you're stacking with your teammate, or you're pressing link after anyways, because it
Yeah.
doesn't do anything. And
Well,
ascendance is a 3 minute cooldown. You press it, doesn't do anything. And then
yeah,
you're on
and
priest, you press guardian serenity, and you're completely fine. It's just,
I,
it's such a different
exactly.
world.
And
Such a
like
different world.
you can press healing tide with the PvP talent, but people can just kill it. Like
Yeah,
like
everyone has
there's
their weak auras now. They just weak
yeah,
aura it.
people just snipe it instantly. Like yeah, it's again. I agree with you though. I feel I kind of have I've had the same shift in mentality that you have, where in the past I've just been kind of overtly and publicly critical of Blizzard, but I think like man, I kind of sympathize with them. Like it is a difficult job to balance all of these things, and I think for the most part, like Shadowlands is pretty balanced. It's just like again, there's these outliers that
Yeah.
just dominate. And I think like what's interesting is I think Arms Warriors, like it's so funny how one change like completely seemed to gut Arms Warriors. Like they I mean, I'm slightly biased. Not to say that I don't like Arms Warriors, but I just think that like that defensive playstyle, I personally don't like it. But Arms Warriors seem to me like the most dominant melee for definitely season one, I think, and
Oh
like
yeah, for sure,
season
for
two.
sure. They were. I think arms warriors were the. They were in the same spot as holy priests now.
Yeah,
They were just half the player base as the DPS. One
and,
spec, half the player base. So yeah, it was
and
crazy.
And it's so funny because one change, like a nerf to defensive stance, was able to kind of like bring them down. So it's like you have to wonder like what is the defensive stance of Holy Priest? And maybe it's Guardian. Or what's the defensive stance for Fire Mage? Like and maybe it's a Blink or Barrier, like who knows? Like it could be these random things that are just
Yeah, I'm not
propping up these
sure
classes.
because they've nerfed super quick. What did they nerf about mage? They nerfed their barrier recently. They nerfed flame tongue or whatever, or flame cannon. They nerfed try and ward again at some point. They nerfed like how quickly you can reset combust.
Yeah,
And they're still
kindling.
and they nerfed Tempest Barrier, which is another shield conduit from their blink. And they are still so dominant. So I don't know. I don't know what it would be to make Fire Mage not feel that way. I feel like at this point it's got to be just buffing other classes. But I think
Yeah,
it's got to be buffing other classes in ways that don't. I think a problem Blizzard has always had is they always overbuff, and I think they've done a really good job this expansion of not over buffing classes. I
yeah,
think the issue is the buffs and nerfs they're doing. Obviously, like it still doesn't seem like quite enough. But I am happy that they're not over buffing or nerfing classes because they've had a tendency to do that in the past, where it's like, oh, Oh, you think Resto Shaman's really good right now? All right, we're gonna nerf their Riptide by 30%. We're gonna nerf their Healing Stream by 30%, and they're just gutted. So this time around, they haven't done that. So I'm not sure what it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know if like for healers, I think like we talked about, I think if they just gave healers damage, I think that'd be a good start for sure.
Yeah.
If they gave the healers that don't do damage better damage, and if they gave healers that feel like their healing is kind of lacking, like Disc Priest and Shaman, I think that would be beneficial. Just
Yep.
hit. They need to hit the weak points of the classes that are lower, obviously.
Yep. Um. So I mean, we've talked a lot about game balance for now, and we tend to try to end on a question that's a bit more, I guess, abstract and kind of pulls away from just talking about game balance. So, Absterge, if you had unlimited money and resources, and you could, pay Blizzard to do, one giant change to their game, to World of Warcraft, what would you want Blizzard to do? Like, what is the biggest change you think WoW needs right now?
The biggest change WoW needs right now.
Yeah, no pressure.
I don't know. I would buff. The biggest change WoW needs right now.
Buff shamans, obviously. Or,
No,
sorry, what?
no. That could be good. I guess if it's one big change, I would love to see just the overall amount of resources buffed in the game, like how fast you gain them. Like I think
Yeah,
honor should be gained a little bit more because the spoils of war buff, if you didn't know, they actually put back in today. So that is 25% conquest and 40% honor. Like I think if conquest was buffed by 40%, I think by an additional 15, so 40 now, on top of what they did. I think if honor was buffed by another 60%, like if honor was doubled, you could do the same thing for valor as well. I think if you got outside of your first win of the day for arena, I think if you got your cosmic flux faster, that'd be nice. um, I think that's all I would really do right now because I feel like the problems with WoW that I have, I feel like are already being fixed in Dragonflight. So I think that would be my main concern is just how quickly you're gaining these resources. So if we're looking at a PvP specific standpoint, I still think honor should be buffed to, at the bare minimum 100%. But
yeah.
yeah, that's what I would do.
All right. And Jake, what about you?
Um, Man, the thing is that we answer this question every single week. I'm gonna run out of things that I want.
Yeah.
I think for me, something that I was thinking about whilst you guys were talking about priests and what to nerf and healers and stuff like that was that I was thinking that I feel like utility spells, utility kit, whatever seems to be the big thing. Like we nerf healing, we buff healing, we buff damage, we nerf damage, whatever. I feel like it's the utility that certain specs and classes have that always kind of makes them so important and reason why they do so well. Like, like I bet you if you put polymorph on the same cooldown duration as hex, no one would play mage. Like, I think there would be people that would probably just wouldn't play. They'd probably play something else because like of the utility just disappears, like of the spammable CC and whatever. That might be totally inaccurate, but that's just my feeling there. So I would kind of try and find a way for them to balance the utility between across all.
What's crazy is you might be onto something there. Not the sheep thing necessarily, but the utility thing. Because
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if they nerfed how often you could reset chastise, or like how long the duration of chastise was. That would be
Yeah.
game breaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe, yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think like instead of the nerfs, kind of like they should bring the balance to a point, like in terms of damage or healing output, so like people can kind of vaguely do similar stuff. And then if certain classes or specs are just too much, just nerf the utility or buff the utility on that one. Like for example, let's take Healing Tide Totem. If people are killing it so quickly, make it super omega stacked, like on HP. So like you can, at least it's guaranteed to get quite a bit out. And if you really want to kill it, commit. Kind of thing, like make it the kind of like a big cooldown that it is, and not just suddenly be like stomped basically. And I think that's like that could be interesting. So that would be my thing. If I could change one thing, it'd be Blizzard putting their sort of, I guess, money and time and effort into sort of checking out utility between classes for PvP.
Yeah, and I think for me, I mean, my answer is I've said this pretty much every week, and it's kind of similar to the answer Absterge gave. Like, I just really think like the game should be more playable in the sense that if you want to play something new, it shouldn't be a crazy amount of effort to play a new class. Like, I really think that, and as we mentioned, it's some of these problems will be fixed with Dragonflight theoretically. That I think like it's just so many other games right now offer that ability to log in, press play, and specifically press play on something you've never played before, and you're just kind of on an equal playing field. And I think the more WoW sort of gravitates towards that sort of new way of playing games, I think the more balanced it will inevitably become. Because I think like if you had the ability to instantly make an ult that was full, max gear, max conduits, and everything, you know, there would probably be even more holy priests on the ladder. Like imagine if you could instantly re-roll, and
Yeah.
I think we'd have probably like 60% of the ladder be holy priests, and then inevitably like Blizzard would have to like step in and say, wait a second, this isn't good.
Yeah, there would be no excuse for sure of like, all
Yeah.
right, well, we got to buff something. We got to buff something that's not Holy Priest.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. I think just playing the game, just being able to play the game faster. I've talked about this a lot. I'll keep it short since obviously we've been talking about. I think if they just I don't have an issue with the game being, there's a lot of progression involved and it takes a decent amount of time to earn things for like a month and a half, 2 months. But once we get to like the 2 month, 2.5, 3 month barrier of a patch, I don't see why they shouldn't just, just destroy the dam, if you will.
Yeah.
Just destroy it completely and let everyone play.
And
That's
it's
kinda
really
how I
funny
feel about it.
because anyone who I've ever talked to who played back in the time of Tournament Realms, like always says that Tournament Realms were like the most fun they've ever had, like playing WoW PvP. Like the nice thing about a Tournament Realm, you just log in, create a character, and buy the gear off the vendor, and you're good to go. And when the Tournament Realms had ladders that you could actually play on, I mean that felt super fun. It felt like there was nothing preventing you from logging in and having a good time. Like even
Yeah.
if you could even just find partners in trade chat or whatever. And I think the closer we get to that sort of experience, like the better the game is going to become. But you know, I again I see a place. I agree. Like I see a place for progression systems, but at a certain point, it's like why do we care about progression systems? Like
Yeah, definitely. That's how I felt last season when, we had a what was last season? Last season was getting up there with the longest seasons we've ever had in WoW
Yeah.
history. Because I think the longest is 38 between two different seasons. I don't remember which one specifically. I think one of them was Wrath or Kata, season 8 and season 11. But last season was 35 weeks. So I don't understand why, let's say we get to the 10 week, 11 week, or let's even say earlier, let's say we get to the 8-9 week barrier. Why not just double down on how much honor you get? Oh, we're 7 weeks into the season, honor is buffed by 110%. Boom. Like that's something that I wish was involved, because at that point people just want to be able to play the game, and it definitely restricts people that are coming back to WoW, and it restricts people who, they want to play the game but their main class isn't that good. Maybe they're kind of bored of it, but they're obviously behind this long progression if they do decide to make something else. So
yeah. All right. So I think we've had a pretty good discussion so far, and we'll wrap things up here in just a moment. Jake, why don't you let us know about the upcoming WoW PvP news?
Yeah, of course. We'll just play that real quick. Okay, WoW PvP news. So Barn Doors 1v1 dueling tournament that happened on the 30th of April. I believe people fought one another in a 1 versus 1 style. And I think Calvish won that one. So congratulations to Calvish. Flarkness hosted another 3v3 community tournament on the 1st of May. I believe the winners for that one were B, Selash, and Grip Hunt. So congratulations for winning that one. Let's have a look. 29th of May to 29th of April, sorry, to the 1st of May, MDI Group B. Congrats to Team Munker for winning first place and Perplexed for taking second. And then 6th to 8th of May, MDI Group C. Congrats to Donuts and Despair for taking first. And then we've got some hot fixes. Big, do you want to take it? Take it from here?
Yeah, so I mean, the most recent news is that the conquest cap has been removed. So if you are behind, you can endure some grueling conquest grind to get all of your gear. If you've been absent past few weeks, like I have. Also, the Creation Catalyst CD was reduced to 4 days. I don't know how recent that is. But in any case, tier sets are obviously really important to a lot of classes right now in Shadowlands, so that's definitely a good change. In some other recent hotfixes, again, Fire Mages did receive a minor nerf to their Blazing Barrier, specifically the one that's procced by Blazing Soul. And today, as Absterge said, is that the Spoils of War has returned, so there is a buff to Conquest and Honor gained that is just passive no matter what activity you're doing. Today actually was the end of Burning Crusade Classic Season 3. So if people have been grinding the ladder on Burning Crusade, trying to get that Vengeful Gladiator title, and today the season ended. I'm sorry, the season ended last week, and I'm sorry, season 4 started today. I had that a bit backwards. And on top of that, there was last week a new mobile game announcement. They did mention a little bit of PvP in the news release. I'm not the biggest mobile game player, but I think that any sort of game that can attract a new audience to the Warcraft universe is pretty interesting, and maybe this will have some ripple effects in the World of Warcraft. Maybe there'll be some new players who decide to play the game because of this new mobile game. Who knows? Um, but anyway, of course, if you have any sort of comments about any of these news or any of the topics we discussed today, feel free. I'm sorry, to type in our Twitch chat or to leave us a comment on the Warcraft Radio Discord. Just to wrap things up, let's do some shout outs. There's always a little fun section, and I guess we'll start with you, Absterge. Do you have anyone you want to shout out for today?
Oh my god, I was not ready for this. Shout out my teammates, my girlfriend, and the Move community. There we go.
Very nice. I guess I'll do my shout outs. I guess I have to shout out my girlfriend as well. I don't. She doesn't play WoW, but if she
You're
did,
welcome.
she'd probably be mad at me not giving her a shout out. Oh, shout out to Taco Tuesday. I'm gonna have tacos today, and the place I go to, they're $2 on Tuesdays. So that's premium value. So shout out to the taco place I get tacos from on Tuesdays. What about you, Jake?
I'm gonna give a shout out to Garrisol. This is for you, buddy. When you listen and do the editing for this, I hope I did okay. Taking over for you, and also I'll shout out my girlfriend as well because I feel like there's a trend. She also doesn't play well, so sad times.
Lucky her.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No. I should teach her though. I should definitely get up on there and teach her some stuff, and so she can be miserable with me. We can suffer together.
This is Guardian Spirit. You press this. Press already.
Oh, my own personal holy priest, of course. This is the answer.
There you go. All right, but so Absterge, you obviously you stream. You're on Twitter. Let our audience know where can they find you. What times can they expect you to stream? What's your schedule looking like?
Well, so I normally stream every single day except for Monday at about, I want to say I start at 2 p.m. PST. Normally, I will be live by then every day except for Monday. So obviously I'm a little late, but it is what it is. It was a fun conversation. So yeah, you could find me over at twitch.tv/thesturge, and my Twitter is twitter.com/sturgy. But I gotta avoid the Twitter for a little bit.
Yeah, Twitter is
Yeah.
Twitter is a bit it's you don't want to be
That's where
there
you can
for
find
long.
me.
Yeah.
Echo
Any
chamber.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, can you let our listeners know where they could reach us if they wanted to?
Yeah, of course. You can contact us directly with a tweet to at technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Warcraft Radio Discord.
Yeah, and also you can visit the Warcraft Radio website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at warcraftradio.com. This new directory also has a review system, so head over there and let everyone know what you think of your favorite shows. Once again, links for all of these will be in the show notes. We want to thank all of you guys for listening, and we'll chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.
Night.